Quick show of hands. How many first time you've come to a DFW DataViz event? Look at that, fantastic. Welcome. We hit a big milestone in the last month. We now have over 2,000 members. Really excited. This is also, thanks to Steve, this is the biggest event we've had as far as RSVPs. We hit 200 people registering to come out tonight. It was fabulous. Quick intro.
The others are very shy.
Yeah. If you don't know me, my name is Randy Crum. I run the group. Here in the DFW area, I run my own data visualization design company called InfoDude. I also run the website called coolinfographics.com. It's also the name of the book I wrote, Cool Infographics. Run this group, and I do teach a course here at SMU, one in the spring and one in the fall, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. If you haven't seen the book, I always carry a copy, so you're welcome to take a look. But if you go online, you can download the first chapter of Cool Infographics for free at coolinfographics.com/book. Tonight I want to thank a couple sponsors. We run the event. SMU gives us space to do these meetups for free, which keeps it free for all of you, which is fabulous. Tonight we have a special sponsor as well. Axis has provided food tonight. So John, would you stand up for a second? John Scott is here from Axis. So we have a couple trays of food over here. There's one tray of vegetarian food. We have desserts. We have vegetable trays. We have a cooler of water and 2 coolers that are mixed with Pepsi and Diet Pepsi. So please, anytime this evening, get up, make your way over there. We don't want to take any of this home or have to throw it away. So please help us. Go ahead, eat as much as you want. Axis, real quick, does data visualization design specifically. I know they're primarily focused in Qlik. It's not all in Qlik. They also do data science solution and business intelligence as a consultancy. And not only in this area, they have offices in Atlanta. Anywhere, where else are there offices?
Chicago,
Okay.
Atlanta, and Northeast New Jersey, New York.
Okay. Anything else you want to mention about Axis?
Other than we are moving rapidly into an agnostic design studio format in Atlanta, and that's a growing office of ours, and we're providing the services all over the U.S.
So, fantastic. So thanks again to Axis and John for sponsoring us and providing some food. If you work for a company that might be interested in sponsoring one event, a couple events, I do have a couple sponsor sheets here for some ideas of what your company would get in return for sponsoring one of our events. So just grab one of these sheets, give it to whoever in your company is in marketing or be interested in just talking to us. We're always looking for help to bring speakers in or arrange special events, that type of thing. Since a lot of you are new to the group, I have posted videos from a number of our past events over the last couple years. There are probably about 10 or 12 videos out there at bit.ly/DFW DataViz video. It's just me, so it usually takes a long time for new videos to get up there, but you can see a number of the fabulous speakers that we've had in the past up on YouTube. Upcoming events. Our next event has already been scheduled. It'll be November 9th. In partnership with SMU's Master of Science and Data Science program, we're flying in Alberto Cairo. Alberto is the head of data journalism down at University of Miami. He's written both the functional art and the truthful art books, and is going around the country with his talk called Visual Trumpery. Have you seen it yet, Steve?
I have not seen it.
I've
read both the books, though.
Yeah, I have too. Yeah. It's going to be a fabulous talk. It's going to be a huge crowd. Probably 200 or 300 people, so we're going to use one of the big auditoriums on the main campus in Dallas at SMU. But that'll be on November 9th. The only way to do that, though, is we're using Meetup as the registration tool. So you have to register an RSVP through Meetup to come out to that event. Again, it's a free event, like all of our events are. I'm going to speak on October 9th at the State of Search. I don't know if any of you get involved in marketing analytics or SEO and search engine marketing. State of Search is probably one of the biggest SEO conferences next to maybe PubCon in the country. And so I'm going to be talking on October 9th. If you're interested and haven't yet bought a ticket, you can use this code RandyCrum100. It'll get you $150 off a registration ticket. It's going to be in downtown Dallas, down in P-Dollar. The class I teach is going to be a little bit different this fall. I'm going to teach a one-day intensive workshop on data visualization tools. So in one day, we're going to go through about 12 different DataViz tools with some sample data sets and just get you some exposure to, of course, Office, but like Tableau and Microsoft Power BI and ClickSense, and then a whole bunch of websites that are also DataViz sites where you can then download the DataViz that you create on the website. It's going to be on December 8th, all day, and you can get 10% off if you use the discount code VIPINST10. I don't know why they came up with that code, but that's the code. And then in the spring, I'm going to go back to my normal class. So my normal class is 6 weeks, 1 night a week, teaching data visualization, dashboards, and infographics design. Anybody else have any in the next maybe month or two events you want to share? Anything in the analytics, data viz, data science world? Anything you guys are going to or planning to go to in the area? No? Okay. You want to run a drawing for your book?
Why don't we do it at the end?
We'll do that at the end. Okay. Then let's bring up Steve.
Okay.
And let's move over and plug your machine in. So Steve Wexler comes to us from New York State, somewhere in New York State.
Close to New York City.
Close to New York City.
I am not a New York Giants fan, so.
So we'll hold off on the giveaway. This is his book.
Also, there's a good, in fact, I'm sure it's going to happen. Within the next 10, 15 minutes, one of my co-authors, okay, will be joining me.
Make sure to give that a second to show up, and let's turn on your mic.
Thank you, Randy. And thank you all for coming out here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. My name is Steve Wexler. I'm just curious, before we get started, just give me a sense of sort of where on a spectrum your work is. How many would say that you're more in the business data visualization sphere? Oh, I guess you need to know what the other sphere is before you say which way. You say, so on this side, I'm not saying is more things, business data visualization, and over to the right would be infographic type of stuff. So things for public consumption in a magazine, on a public website, that type of thing. How many think would say they lean more towards business, internal, maybe customer facing? Okay. Yeah, I had to give you the other option, and oh, there we go. And how many are more in the infographic type of thing, which is heavy designs, got to have a certain visual appeal to draw people in. Okay, a little more on the business end it seems to be, which is definitely the end that I'm involved with. There are very few people that are really adept at both. One of the people that I know of is Randy right there. I'm curious what tools you're using. How many people are using Excel for the visualizations? Okay. How many are using Click? Power BI? Power BI? MicroStrategy? D3? Any D3ers here? Tableau. Okay, that's my tool of choice. So let me kind of give you the what we're attempting to do. So that is not my bookshelf. Mine is not nearly as cool looking. That is Andy Cotgreave's bookshelf with the really cool graphic methods for presenting facts in the background. We attempted in the book to distill our combined 30 years experience in business data visualizations into a 448-page book. Tomorrow we're attempting to distill that into a one-day workshop, which I will hawk a little bit later. And today we're attempting to distill all those things into a 45 or 50-minute presentation. So let me tell you who we are. I'm Steve Wexler. I'm the founder and principal of Data Revelations. I was the first Tableau Iron Viz champion back in the 1950s, and I am a Tableau Zen master. And that's an actual thing. I realize I put that on a card, I show it to people, and they don't know that's a thing, and they must be wondering, this guy's a total tool. Who calls himself a, who calls himself a Zen master? It's actually a thing. By the way, my biggest claim to fame was having the intelligence to recruit the next two people to write the book with me. Jeff Shaffer, who will be here momentarily, I feel like, you know, the family Von Trapp. The Von Trapp family, for all you Sound of Music fans. Jeff Shaffer is the Vice President of Unifund. He is also an adjunct professor of business intelligence and business at University of Cincinnati. He is also a fellow Tableau Zen master and co-author of the book. And then we have in London, and he won't be showing up here today, so I can speak badly of him. This is Andy Cotgreave. He's the technical evangelist at Tableau, and he's a Computer World columnist. And he did have, I'm going to share one of his slides. He has 2 young daughters, one of whom depicted this and showed her classmates. This is my dad's book, and I think it's really boring because it's about dashboards. And sadly, my daughters are 22 and 25 respectively, and they probably feel the same way. So just what is a dashboard? We are not talking about a car dashboard. And by the way, the derivation of the word is interesting. You should look it up, where it comes from and what it's about. It's actually pretty cool. In any case, early on, we got some advice from Stephen Few, one of the great pundits on data visualization. He said it's absolutely essential that you have a clear definition of what a dashboard is. This is the definition that he offered a number of years ago. He's written great books on the subject. He's written a book on information dashboard design. Now I See It. I do recommend his stuff highly, although we absolutely do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. His definition is a dashboard is a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives consolidated and arranged on a single screen so the information can be monitored at a glance. Okay? Later on, he offered this, saying that is not the same as a multifaceted or a faceted analytical display. It's a set of interactive charts. That's kind of my wheelhouse, primarily graphs and tables that simultaneously reside on a single screen, each of which presents a somewhat different view of a common data set and is used to analyze information. So by his definition, none of our stuff are dashboards. They're all faceted analytical displays. This just didn't work for us. It just didn't quite roll off the tongue so effectively. So let's go back to this. A dashboard is a visual, oops, sorry, that's our definition. Just look at those 2 things that are in red. Columns consolidated and arranged on a single screen so the information can be monitored at a glance. Well, single screens, we're doing so much stuff for phone and mobile devices. That's not on a single screen. You got to scroll, you got to look at other stuff. And monitored at a glance, some of these things require, hey, that looks interesting, I'm going to click that, or I'm going to hover over that. So this is our definition of a dashboard. Dashboard is a visual display of information used to monitor conditions and or facilitate understanding. It is an incredibly broad definition. It means a PDF report could be a dashboard. Something with a single screen could be with a single graphic. Something with multiple graphics. Does it have to have interactivity? No. If it has interactivity, is it still a dashboard? We realized it wasn't that important to have this definition. The important thing that we wanted to present in the book, and that we didn't see any other book doing this, it was if you have this particular predicament, this business problem, what we call a scenario, we think here is a solution that might work for you. So the idea is to thumb through the book and find something which is, hey, we kind of have something which is like this. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's similar enough. So it wasn't that important. By the way, based on Stephen Few, he reviewed the book and he actually liked it. Okay, but based on his definition of a dashboard, how many of the examples in our book would be considered a dashboard? And that's 2 out of 28.
You should mention how hard it is to get Stephen Few to like something.
Any of you remember Andy Rooney from 60 Minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. He's a stickler. Let's just put it that way. And there is an overarching thing, and what I'm about to get into is the 6 key things that I want to distill from the book. There's 6 overarching ideas, but maybe the top one is a great book by Austin Kleon. How many of you have read this? Have seen it? It's a tiny book. It looks, enormous. It's small. You can read it in half hour, 40 minutes, and it really encourages people to look at other people's work, borrow from it, but cite it. I'm going to take a few words from this, which is nobody is born with a style or a voice. You don't come out of the womb knowing who we are. In the beginning, we learn by pretending to be our heroes. We learn by copying. We're talking about practice here, not plagiarism. Plagiarism is trying to pass someone else's work off as your own. Copying is about reverse engineering. It's like a mechanic taking apart a car to see how it works. We learn to write by copying down the alphabet. Musicians learn to play by practicing scales. Painters learn to paint by reproducing masterpieces. Copy your heroes and copy people who inspire you. And when you see good examples of things that work, we want you to copy them. All right, this is where I had hoped Jeff would come in, because when we do this thing together, he starts with this item, number 1, which is design to a grid. And this is, any of you have studied graphic design, desktop publishing, this is kind of a foundational notion that if you create a grid of equally spaced elements, it's almost impossible not to create something that looks pretty good. So he was working with a graphic designer and someone who is an expert in typography, by the way. If you read these things and look at all these different diseases associated with typochondria, typophobia, typothermia, they're actually very funny. But what's behind all these things is in fact a grid, and you can place the things in different positions and you'll have really good layout. So these things that from desktop publishing work great with dashboards as well. So here is a dashboard from Rod Radburn. He's a fellow Zen master. He's located in the UK, and it's creation of small multiples. He did not consciously put a grid behind all of this, but it sure fits to a grid extremely well. Here's a dashboard that comes from Dundas. They do some incredibly good work. This is one great use of something called bands as well, but you can see they clearly have in these different segments, here's goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, and we have an executive summary over on the right, and all these things fit into a grid. So that was done by Dundas. Here's a Tableau dashboard from Jonathan Drummey. You can also see the grid in effect. Here's another Dundas dashboard. This one, the grid is obvious. This is something that was designed to be displayed in real time on a giant screen in a call center. And here's something that is comes from Stephen Few's Information Dashboard Design 2nd edition, and where he suggests the where to place different objects, and that there's this notion that in the upper left is where most people's eyes are drawn. We're going to show you a little later how you can totally mess with that. We can do things, you can make people look any place you want on the dashboard very easily. I'm going to show some eye tracking research. All right, so that would be point 1, design to a grid. Basic desktop publishing and graphic design elements. Number 2, avoid clutter. And in an attempt to show people all this information, you end up making it harder to take stuff in. I'm going to show you something, a very disturbing image that I saw presented at a Tableau user group meeting. Presented as something you should do, and you should definitely not do this. Okay? Yeah. So let's say I'm really interested in copiers and faxes. That's like that's my product group. I want to know how they're performing. How on earth am I going to figure out what's going on here and which one is copiers and faxes and how it's doing? This, by the way, is an example of something we call, yeah, man. Fantastic, look where we are. They're here for the cat. So all that stuff I said about Jeff, none of it is true, okay? That's So the timing is perfect, and there's more water over there, and delightful sustenance. This is an example that we have in the book. We recognize people are going to open it up, thumb through it, and you're going to stumble across a graphic. And our goal was to have far more examples of good dashboards than bad dashboards. And we cited Stephen Few's book, and unfortunately his example is the reverse, because back when he wrote it, there weren't that many good dashboards out. But we know you're going to come across a graphic. We have some bad examples in here. We don't want you to have to work too hard to determine, wait, is this something good or is this crap? So anytime you see this, that means don't make something that looks like this. So I want to contrast this with, hey, I want to see how the category of product that I'm interested in is performing versus all others. Here's an alternative. Just mute everything, just highlight the thing I'm interested in, and with no effort, I can see I went from being pretty crappy at the beginning of the line to doing really well. Oh, wait, hold on, I gotta show off. There we go. Doing really crappy at the beginning, and now, hey, I'm the fourth best product group at the end. By the way, I can't, when you're in this view, I can't point at this one, yeah. Jeff is one of the few people, well, Jeff is able to memorize the deck. He doesn't need to see the little notes that are happening ahead of time and stuff like that. I like to know, oh yeah, that's the next slide that's coming up. And it's the notion of introducing white space or negative space. This is a desktop publishing concept where let the stuff breathe. You don't have to fill every square pixel or in a square, whatever it is would be the dimension on the screen, with information. No one has ever said, that dashboard would be better if you crammed more crap into it. So the notion of white space and negative space, here's a desktop publishing concept, which is, all the information is there and it's crammed into a short amount of space. It's very hard to take in. If you add spacing before and after, increase the leading, it works very effectively. Much easier to take in. Let me give you some examples with some dashboards. So here is an early cut of a dashboard that is in the book. This version isn't in the book. In fact, it gets a screaming cat. And there are essentially 4 or 5 different graphics. There are a bunch of things that are wrong with it. You've got text which is rotated 90 degrees. The use of the stacked bar isn't correct. But one of the chief culprits is it's cluttered. There's no space between the elements. It's hard to say where one element ends, where another element begins. And there are a lot of numbers next to things that don't need to be. Contrast it with this example, which is in the book. And things breathe much more easily. It's clear what the different elements are. Not everything is labeled. But key to note, really the same number of graphics are there. I think you had kind of a compound graphic, but it wasn't like, oh, there were 30 graphics and now we'll reduce it to 4. No, it's roughly the same amount, and it's just been pared down a little bit. So here's the before and after example. Here's another example of something which definitely earns a screaming cat. This is an early cut of a dashboard that made it into the book. And by the way, this back and forth and that we had with some of the people who submitted, it's a crucial part of making good work. We call this the kitchen sink dashboard. It's got so much stuff in it. And you've got to ask, is everything needed on this thing? Maybe we have the most important things first, and if somebody wants to drill down. So here's a case where it's too many things and they're way over labeled. Here's the after version that made it into the book. And this is right on the threshold of, I think, of just a proper number of elements to be in there. In addition to there being fewer elements and they're spaced out and it's designed in a grid, also there are far fewer labels, meaning that we don't have every mark, every bar have a number on it, because it's just too much information to take in. And we can see the before and after in this case. Lest you think that I came into this genre, data visualization, knowing how to do this stuff, I was really bad when I started out. In fact, I was really bad for a number of years. So I'm going to show you some of my work early on. And that's really bad. This isn't my specialty in data visualization is around survey data, and I won't get into what I'm trying to show, but I'm doing a terrible job of it. This is my work from roughly 10 years ago. It definitely gets a screaming cat. And all the elements that I added here, like the rules, and there's a gray band and a yellow band, they all made it harder, not easier, for people to see what's going on. So all those elements I added, they just distracted as opposed to enhance the understanding. And in fact, this is so bad on so many levels, it isn't even the right chart. That's the chart that you should be doing to be showing that type of information. A lot clearer and a lot easier to see. And not everything is labeled, and the thing breathes. And with that, I'm going to pass control over to Jeff, and you can get into a discussion of color.
Sounds good.
All right. Jeff Shaffer.
I literally just arrived from the airport. I didn't think I was going to make the meeting in time, so apologies for barging in, but here we are. I do present without notes, but that's typically in my own deck. So
This
I'm
is your
using
deck.
Is this my deck?
This is,
Okay.
it's
My material? Okay, good.
I threw in one slide, he doesn't know about it.
So I guess we're on tip 3, which is the use of color in data visualization. And I tell my students in class, I teach data visualization at the University of Cincinnati, and been doing that for about 6 years. And I tell my students, if I had to pick one thing that people get wrong, it's color in data visualization. And I don't think they do it purposefully. I don't think they're trying to confuse. I think it's just a mistake. They don't understand how they're encoding. So I think people approach data visualization with an idea that color is going to be organized, we're going to use it very purposefully, and you know, all is well. But unfortunately, it turns out a little bit more like this, just kind of diving in there and making things with color. So this is my favorite slide of, probably my favorite page of the book. Page 15 is the use of color in data visualization. And it talks about the different ways that we use color. The 3 primary ways, which by the way are built in if you're a Tableau user. I don't know how many people are Tableau users, but these 3 ways are built into Tableau. They are absolutely not built into tools like Excel or PowerPoint, which, you know, mixes it all up and gets it wrong. Sequential, diverging, and categorical are those 3 primary ways to use color in data visualization. Sequential is a quantitative field, and it's going to go from low to high. Think sales.
Go to the next, Andy added some slides.
See, he did change my
Oh,
deck.
no, Andy changed
Andy
it. Didn't you
my
get the
deck.
memo?
It's okay. It's all good. So this is low to high, and think sales where you have something starting at 0 and it goes to infinity. There's typically no negative sales, and it's a quantitative field. Now, diverging is sort of the same thing. It's 2 sequentials that diverge to a midpoint. And the midpoint could be anything. A good example of this might be profit, where the midpoint is 0. And if profit is 0, you know, companies can lose money and companies can make money. So that's a good example. But it doesn't always have to be 0. It could be average. It could be the unemployment rate in the country. And here are the states that are below average. Here are the states that are above average. It could be a target. It could be last year's number that we're trying to hit. It could be the sales target that we decided, and here's the teams below target, here's the teams above target. The key here is it's also a quantitative field. It's some sort of measure. Then we have categorical. That's the easy one where you just have categories. Think fruits, you know, bananas, apples, oranges, pears, or cars, minivans, motorcycles, pickup trucks. Very simple. But imagine that you had a sequential color scheme and you were trying to figure out minivans were just the lighter blue and the slightly darker blue is pickup trucks. That'd be really, really hard to tell. Also, if you're using a categorical, imagine saying brown is more sales than the light blue, or the dark blue is more sales than the orange. Doesn't really make sense in that context. And then we added 2 to the categorical scheme, which are just variations. It's categorical color, but it just uses 2 colors. Steve just gave an example in that line chart where he highlighted one of the lines, copiers and faxes, in blue, and all the others were gray. So we can just highlight the one that we're most interested in, that is the most important. Now, highlight is just to highlight a piece of information to grab your attention. We show that differently from alert, which is basically the same thing, except it uses a bright, alarming, alerting color to grab your attention. Now in Western culture, red is typically thought to be bad, so especially in the business world. So if you have a business report, business dashboard, you don't want to just throw something in red. You know, sales are going up, but they're in red, they'll wonder why. Now that's not everywhere. In China, you know, red is power and it's in the flag, it's a good color. But in the Western culture, red is considered to be bad. I guess I should also say there are instances where you have branding. I live in a city where we have sports teams that are the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm at the University of Cincinnati where the colors are red and black. Our Bengals are orange. You know, we have sports teams that override. So on opening day, the city turns bright red. That's just the way that it is. So I've actually seen the visualizations that the Cincinnati Reds do. What do they use? Everything's in red, so it kind of dominates. So there may be instances where your brand can override some of these, but regardless, you're still going to use the fundamental concepts of sequential, diverging, and categorical color schemes. A few examples that we'll just show you. This is from Nicholas Felton's Feltron report. For 10 years, he did a quantified self project and created these beautiful prints of art with data about himself. And this is a great example of just using color to highlight something. You'll see it's very simple. There's white and gray, but he's using yellow to give a little pop on the color. This is inspiration for one of the dashboards in the book, the Web Analytics dashboard. And you can see I'm doing the same thing. I'm just using color, in this case, to highlight certain pieces of information. The color here is not encoding data at all. Yellow does not mean anything with the data. So it could be blue, it could be green, it could be white. And we even give a black and white example in the book. Here's another example of one of Nicholas Felton's reports. Notice the blue, right? It's blue, black, and that's really it. And here's the course metrics dashboard from the book, where I'm using blue simply to highlight the 2 most recent rating periods of a course. And I just highlight it, and that's it. There's a light gray for everything else. There's a dark gray to outline the FANA as the business analytics courses, and then the line is the college, and then the blue dots are my course. And so it's an easy way to highlight those 2 courses against the rest of the data. And then this example is a what-if analysis. Matt Chambers, one of the Tableau Zen masters, built this. This is to show the impact of a change in minimum wage. So imagine a state is changing the minimum wage, or your company has a policy and they're changing the minimum wage policy. This would show the impact on the company. It shows a distribution of where that is, and it's very simple. Blue below and gray above, a very good use of color in the visualization. One of the other key points I want to talk about is color vision deficiency, aka colorblind, and this is something that afflicts 10% of men. The official numbers are about 8% worldwide, but in predominantly white cultures, the US, it's higher. It can be 10, 11, even 12%. So you'll hear numbers that 10% of men are colorblind, and that's true. And it only affects less than 1% of women. So it's a really, really small percent of women. This is an example of the very common traffic light colors that we see in business intelligence tools. Tableau has this palette, Excel has this palette, Click, MicroStrategy, they all have a traffic light palette. And the problem is the red and the green in that particular palette. You'll hear that a lot in data visualization. Don't use red and green together. And the reason is, on the right-hand side, we're simulating that for the 10% of men to kind of show what that looks like. And it's really, really hard to see between red and green. Now, you don't have to volunteer this information in a room this size with this many men. We have a really good chance that somebody in here is colorblind. However, my co-author thinks he has a theory that somebody in this business is less likely to be colorblind. So if you want to volunteer that you're colorblind, you're welcome to raise your hand and prove him wrong. But so far, so good. He's winning this bet.
Jeff, I paid everybody $50 before you got here.
So that would get a screaming cat simply because of the color choice. And there's no accommodation for the red and green here. This slide here, which we include in the book, is really to hit home that it's not just red and green. There's no red up here. So it's actually more accurate to say don't use red and green and orange and brown together, because they're all going to look about the same color brown. Now, blue is a good one. In this case, there's no blue here, so all of those dots look about the same. So again, screaming cat. In this instance, one of the dots is blue, so the blue holds up a little bit, and I can kind of tell that the blue is blue, but notice there is red in the fuchsia color and purple, right? They're mixing colors here. And so even those colors, those 2 particular colors, are very, very hard to tell apart. Our best recommendation, and we offer some choices, free tools, that are available. There's a Chrome add-in called No Coffee that you can get. It's free. Download it. You can simulate anything in your browser for colorblind. There is a couple tools, one of which we outline. I think it's I can't remember the name of it. Japanese.
I couldn't tell you the website or the gentleman who made it. It's a really good simulator.
Yeah. And if you use Adobe, Adobe Illustrator has it built in, so obviously that's not free, but it has a built-in tool for it. There's a lot of free online tools for simulating color vision deficiency, so I would encourage you to do that. The other thing that we offer, and I think this is chapter 33, we said what happens in the real world when you're forced into this dilemma of having to use red and green together. We have these real-world chapters, and this is a real-world chapter for me because for 5 years of my life I had a chief operating officer who required everything to be in red and green. We had to use the traffic light colors, so for 5 years of my life every report and dashboard in our company was red and green. So we have the problem. We know that red and green here, and this is an alternate version where the red is a little darker, the green is a little lighter than normal. Andy must have deleted one of my slides.
No, we got the next one.
No, but he deleted, there it is.
There it is.
I clicked past it. This is the traditional color, and notice on the bottom the browns are identical between the red and green. That's because the red and green are of similar shades. So, between light and dark, and we talk about hue and saturation and value, they're so similar that when you simulate them, they basically look the same color, brown. Now in this example, what I did is the red is a dark, deep dark red, the green is a light green, and so now the brown is darker, the other brown is lighter, and you can tell the difference. So there's one way that you could use red and green and get away with it. Here's another one for you, is if you can get away with this, add a little bit of blue to the green, because as we said, blue works really, really well. Make it a little bit bluish green, and that'll give even more contrast to that other color, which looks a little bit gray. So there's 2 tips for you on how you can use red and green, even in the worst of situations where a stacked bar would be one of them, right? Doesn't get much worse than that. If you couldn't tell the difference, they both look to be exactly the same color. And in this, using our palette that we propose here, you can even tell the difference between the dark and the light on a stacked bar or in a scatter plot like we showed you before. With that,
No, why don't you take...
you want me to take fonts?
Take fonts.
I'll take fonts. Who gives a font? We're going to talk about font, contrast, and bands. My co-author came up with that one, and I think you'll like this term. So let's get into this. The first concept about fonts, I guess typography in general, is contrasting your fonts. This is a great technique, really helpful in dashboards. It can really work in your visualizations to create this contrast of, for example here, a top-level font that's really big, it's wide, it's kind of bold, right, thick. You have a mid-level font that's smaller, in this case that's blue, and then you have smaller low-level font for your data that you could have to as a data table or your data labels. What I want to point out here is that the big font, the top-level font, had that been black or blue, it would have been so overwhelming. And so it's pulled back with color. So we use color to pull that big font back. The mid-level font, if we want to drive your attention to it, we use the color, the highlighting color, and so we can draw attention with that. This is exactly the font levels that I used for the course metrics dashboard. So you'll see the course metrics, the title, really big. It's real thick, bold font, but yet it kind of sits back and is not in your face because it's a light gray. The things that stand out are the labels about students and enrollments and classes and ratings and sessions, all of those things. And then the blue that I'm using to highlight those 2 recent quarters. And then bands, that's what bands stand for. Steve came up with that as big ass numbers. You know, if you want to be friendly in the corporate environment, I'll call it big angry numbers. But whatever you want to call them, they're these big numbers that give us our KPIs, the things that we need to pay attention to on our dashboard. It's sort of the headlines of the newspaper, right? So here's a dashboard from the book where we stripped away the bands at the top, and here's what it looks like with the bands. We put the big numbers up at the top, you have your fees, right there. That's how much we made in fees. That's the most important piece of information, right? How much money we made. And then right next to it, what's the potential that we can make? Boom, got that. And so right across the top, I have those numbers. And then great care was even taken. Look at the alerting factor here, little red dots to just pay attention to where I'm supposed to look. 3 things are going to grab my attention in the bar charts, and the numbers at the top, there's 2 dots. Boom, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be looking at to grab my attention. That's the headline of the newspaper right there. Right? Newspapers are really good at this. Breaking news, right? And then the details underneath, we have the details on the viz, all right there. Contrast those two, you can kind of see the difference there. You can also use this as a color legend. You saw that on the course, actually on the complaints dashboard that Steve showed earlier, where fees are always going to be the blue, the potential is always going to be the green. So it's consistent throughout the visualization. That's another thing I guess I should say with color is be consistent with your color. I was looking at student projects last night in class, and that was the recurring theme is they would use blue over here to mean one thing and then blue over here to mean something else. So look at that. Potential is always green throughout the viz, and I don't have to have a color legend to tell me what it is. The complaints dashboard, open complaints are that orange color. Closed complaints are the blue color. Consistent throughout the viz, every chart reads the same way. Tableau has been doing some research in this area with some of these things that we've been talking about. And Tableau as an organization spends an enormous amount of money, I think $300 million in research last year. And there's been a lot of eye tracking research, but there's not been a lot of eye tracking research as it relates to data visualization, and specifically there's been very, very little on dashboards. And so they've taken this on, they've purchased the equipment to be able to do this. They had set up a lab at the conference last year, and people came in and they're studying dashboards. They needed a whole bunch of dashboards. We have a whole bunch of dashboards, so they used our dashboards. So what I'm going to show you here is real results here from that activity. They haven't published any findings about it yet, so just understand that what I'm showing you, they haven't come out with any statistically proven facts for you yet. But I think that this will really open your eyes to some of these topics. So the first thing they looked at is bands at the top of the visualization from the agency dashboard and versus the bottom of the visualization. Do these big numbers grab your attention regardless of where you put them? And so here we go. We'll put them side by side. What you're seeing here is a black screen, and it goes white when somebody's eyes hit it. So this is a group of hundreds of people looking at the dashboard, and as they look at it, you'll kind of see what they're looking at. And putting it side by side, clearly, if the bands are at the top, people are looking at it a little bit more, right? I mean, we can kind of see that. They do grab attention at the bottom, because you can see a little bit more white on the right-hand side than you can on the left, but not the same as when they're at the top. And the color in the stacked area chart over there, that clearly is grabbing the attention. And then here we have the kitchen sink dashboard, if you will, that was redone. This is the workman's compensation dashboard. On the left-hand side, they're looking at the bands. This is the way we had it in the book, actually, with the smaller numbers. And then they made the bands bigger to see if that would grab attention. So now we're looking at the size of the bands. And so let's look at that, see what happens. Clearly in the middle, there's a little bit more, right? Those big numbers are definitely standing out. So the size of the bands, if we look at that side by side, that clearly is pulling it out there. Everything else is pretty much the same. I guess the other learning Andy likes to tell about this is if you want somebody to look at your dashboard, you can put what appears to be a naked body on the right-hand side, and everybody will look over there. So yeah, that's another tip for you, just if you want them to look in a certain area. Collaboration. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So I agree wholeheartedly with Jeff that the #1 infraction with dashboard design is the misuse of color. And I would say in working on this book with both Andy and Jeff, and just seeing and working with the people who submitted stuff, for me, the most important thing would be to find collaborators. Specifically, find collaborators and iterate, iterate, iterate. And not just co-creators of the thing. Get your stakeholders, your audience involved. People have asked me, how is it that 3 different people could write a book together? Didn't you have debates? Didn't you have disagreements, fights, arguments, etc.? Of course we did, but it wasn't like a band that was breaking up because of artistic differences. We weren't trying to create art. I'm not saying we didn't want to make dashboards that weren't beautiful, but that wasn't our overarching goal, was to create some sort of piece of art that people would admire. We were seeking clarity. And it was what might be clear to me, because I've been living with the data for so long, and the visualization might not be clear to somebody else. So we had one common goal, and that is for your target audience, not the general population. For the largest number of people, you want to provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to understand what's happening in the viz. So let me give you a scenario from the book, how it came about, and how the collaboration resulted in something much better than had I just been at it on my own, plowing away, saying, yeah, I'm really great at this stuff, I'm going to make something great, and if people don't get it, well, that's their tough luck. So here's the scenario. Any of you involved with studying churn or attrition? Either employees leaving, coming into the organization or leaving, or in this case, it's subscriber churn. People subscribing to a newspaper, signing up. How many people sign up? How many people decided not to renew? So here's the data set, quickly, which is, hey, on a particular month for a particular division, we had this many people come in, this many people go out. Where are we doing well? Where are we doing poorly? Are we getting more and more people and losing fewer? What's going on? This was my first attempt at doing this. And it was a result of a student coming up after a class saying, hey, the class was great, but I don't know how to do this. I said, oh, let me think about it. And it proved to be really hard, at least for me. So this is my first attempt with this. I'm not going to get into it. The gray bar is it went up a certain number of units and then went down a certain number in the first month, and it left us with 30. Then in the second month, we start with 30. We added a few. We took a few down. We ended up with 20. Uh-oh, we started with 30. We ended up with 20. We lost 10 people. What are we going to do? This is my first attempt. This is a collage of the roughly 30 attempts that went into this. Most of them have to deal with bars and lines, but I experimented, tried something else here, which was the gray bars are showing where people came in, and you can see the big spikes there, and the red bars are, or the red, I'm calling them bars, the red area chart, the red peaks are where people left, and some people were confused by that. Wait a second. You have people coming in, and then people leaving should be going the other way, right? So changing that was a source of confusion, et cetera. And then I had the running total as a separate line. And then somebody commented and said, I don't know, it looks like a bunch of guys in hoods around a fire. And I said, okay, we're not. Yeah, now you can't help but see that, right? So this one got chucked. And I thought I had it with this one. Oh, by the way, let me add one additional requirement, okay? The person said, oh, my organization, yeah, they're kind of into charts, but they're going to insist on seeing the numbers, okay? They're numbers people, they're spreadsheet people. Anyone have anything like that? Where you're trying to create data visualization and charts, they said, yeah, but I want to see the numbers that are behind it. Okay, so I just want to recall that's a requirement. Okay, with this in mind, I thought I had it. I ran it past Jeff. Jeff didn't have a problem understanding it. Andy did. Andy said, I'm not buying this. It's not clear the way the bars are separated, clusters, et cetera. Now, part of the issue is there are certain things that my tool of choice, Tableau, does well. And the book is not about a particular tool. And there are certain things it doesn't do so well. And one is creating clustered or paired bar charts. But thanks to a blog post by a fellow Zen master, Jonathan Drummy, I was able to figure out how to do it. This is the version that made it into the book. And it's showing how many came in, how many came out, and what the overall is. By the way, I'm not saying this is an obvious read. There are some charts which are going to require a little bit of explanation, and this is one of them. Now, let's go back to that requirement about all the numbers being in there. So I had this wonderful chart, and then I had all the numbers in there because it was a requirement. Jeff gave me pushback. He said,
I'm not buying this, which is his way. Having worked with him for over a year, he hated it. He said, I don't know about this. That's his way of saying, I hate this. And I thought about it and went, oh my God, he's right. And I'm the one who preaches, how many of you know what a highlight table is in Tableau? Everyone else on the planet calls it a heat map. Tableau calls it a highlight table. I call it the gateway drug to data visualization. It's a way to get people off of just having numbers. It's called conditional text in Excel, where you can have certain cells be a different color based on the condition being met. And Jeff was so right. Make the things that are bad pop out, make the things that are good there, and you've got your numbers in there. And eventually, this thing all got put together into something that worked really well. And it's interactive, and you can click different things and see how the thing works. And overall, it took months to do this, but it was the back and forth with Jeff, it was with Andy, it was with other people looking at this thing, giving me feedback and realizing, oh, I can now read the chart because I've been living with it for 2-3 weeks. Other people can't. They're right. I can probably make this better. By the way, I'm going to show off a little bit. I didn't just write the book with these guys. I actually read the book. Okay? And having read the book, I realized, man, if I could just change one thing on that dashboard. I put bands in up at the top. It really draws the thing together. It tells you, here's what the gains, losses, best month, worst month, net, etc. So if I had an opportunity to do it. Lots of debates. And one of the favorite parts of the book people have told us about is that we'll write about a scenario and our solution, and then we'll have author commentary, where it often came about where one of us was going, I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, or some discussion. So this is my go-to way of showing somebody, here's how you're doing versus all your peers. Here's your dot, here's everybody else's dot. Whomever this dot is, it's speaker number 317, they did really well. Look at their dot. It's really high up compared to all the other dots. Andy gave me a little bit of pushback and said, why aren't you using a box plot to show distribution? That's a really common chart type. I hate box plots. But if I knew my audience and they were statisticians, they might be insulted if I didn't include a box plot, also called a box and whisker plot or a two-key plot. So we include that in the book. Further discussions with Jeff said, maybe here's the way that we should be showing this. So I have my go-to way, but I have to know who my audience is beforehand. But we present 3 possible ways of showing the same thing. Here's another example. This was how do I show how I'm doing year to date this year versus the previous year. And I wanted to make a mobile dashboard, and I see this scenario all the time in my consulting practice, so I wanted to make sure that we had it covered. Andy looked at this and said, you're showing the actuals, but maybe the more important thing is to show the difference from the previous year. And I was so embarrassed. I said, oh my God, he's right. This is important, but maybe they want to see this view. And had he not given me pushback, I would have left something really important on the table. So the new dashboard has a toggle, show the actual or show the year over year. Much better way to show it. Would have gone to press without it, would have been a much worse dashboard. So please, find people that you can collaborate with, bounce ideas off of. There should be lots of debates. You should be in the same boat together and have the same goal, which is clarity. So where do you find collaborators? Well, look to your left, look to your right. User groups like this one, and kudos to you for creating, you said that you exceeded 2,000 people in this meetup. That's insane. Follow blogs and people whose work that you like. And when you find someone whose work that you like, and send them a fan letter, send them an email or something like that, and ask them, hey, I'm working on stuff, would you mind having a look at what I'm doing? I'd be surprised if you don't get a reply, either they're inconsiderate or they're really busy, but they'll probably will get back to you with that. And Jeff, do you want to bring it home with Steal Like an Artist?
Sure. Or we can do it together?
We can.
Steal like an artist.
I read the quote already.
You did?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Read a quote?
he reads it better.
that's really the concept of where we started with this. That's why, why did we write this book? As Steve mentioned, most of the books on data visualization are filled with lots of examples of what not to do. And that's helpful. You learn what not to do, but you can't emulate the good. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So I would encourage you to find those examples, whether that be in data visualization, whether it even be outside of data visualization. It could be art, could be music, could be other things that inspire you, but fundamentally you want to find that work that's going to inspire you and bring it into your visualization. We would encourage you to pull that inspiration from many sources. This is an example that we outline in the book. It's about football, European football, so soccer for us. And you're probably not running a soccer club. You're probably not building a soccer dashboard. But yet, this is a really great way to show time series data in a different way that could help you in whatever you're trying to show in a very similar scenario, rather than a traditional line chart. You have the yellow dot that's highlighting this player, maybe a salesman at that particular, how they're doing at that moment in time or that category. You have the 5 previous periods outlined in red. And then
Jeff, if you go to the next slide, it's a little bigger so you can see the difference.
And then you have light gray dots in the background for all the rest. So you can kind of see, where am I now? Where was I in the last 5 iterations? And where was I previously? And if you were just looking at this thinking, oh, well, I don't do soccer dashboards, you might miss something like that. And we find that inspiration all over the place. As a fan of Tableau, I can tell you one of the biggest things I love about Tableau is Tableau Public. So even if you're not a Tableau user, check out Tableau Public, because there's all of these visualizations out there that just constantly get published. Just this week, 780 submissions to Kantar's Information is Beautiful Awards. There's 780 of them. Go look at them and get inspiration from them and find things that you like. I have a folder specifically in my Dropbox for inspiration, and I throw vizzes and images in there, and even color palettes and things like that, things that grab my attention that I want to use. Why don't you take this one?
Okay, so here's one of our last dashboards. I think it's the last one to make it into the book. We were near the end of writing the book, and I met with a client, and we ended up using the book to help them make a better dashboard. Here's the dashboard as it was initially. And it's perfectly fine. It's a big table with numbers and other stuff going on. But we ended up, I started showing them different chapters that were still in rough form. I said, I got to show you this complaints dashboard. Use the stack bar really effectively. And we ended up doing the same thing. And look at the use of these big ass numbers or bands that are here that would work really well to create the kind of the key conversation points of this. So we started with this, we started thumbing through the book, and we ended up with this. So, here's the before and here's the after version of it, and it's pretty compelling. And we want you to look through all these things, pick and choose, and get inspiration from them. And one of the most heartening things we've seen is that people are starting to post stuff on Twitter and other places saying, hey, I got inspiration from the book. This is Curtis Harris on the left doing like a scary cover version of Jeff's Motown hit, Data Visualization Course Metrics. And then we've got a showing rank and magnitude in the middle, and then someone borrowing from a Dundas dashboard. And we want you to steal this stuff and borrow and be inspired by it. If you are a Tableau user, 11 of the 28 dashboards are available for download at bigbookofdashboards.com. Also, I'm going to give the plug for this. We are giving a full-day workshop on this tomorrow, and I believe we still have some free space in the workshop, Jeff, like 1 or 2 spaces.
I don't know that room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. We have some room if you'd like to join us. And Jeff, I'll let you sum up the 6 things. And then we will have a drawing for the book.
Sounds good. Design to a grid. I can do these. Avoid clutter. Yes, that's important. The use of color in data visualization, my favorite. The font contrast and the bands, the big ass numbers. Collaborate, find people to collaborate with, coworkers, the people in this room, people from the community, reach out to people. It doesn't hurt to ask, hey, if you like somebody's work, will you take a look at my viz? And steal like an artist, find inspiration in what you're doing, find the things that you like, find a dashboard that looks great, a visualization, and try to pick out why you like it. You like it because of the color or the way that it's displaying the data. And that's it. I guess we can take questions.
And so we'll do the questions, and then we'll do the drawing of the book.
One of the issues I run into very frequently is, when you try to introduce some of the new more conventional data visualizations in a business setting, for instance, people are used to looking at bar charts and what shows a change from one year to another. You have bar charts side by side, and I can see you showed a lot of examples of the dumbbell chart where you have the dots kind of showing the difference, and I kind of like that. The reaction I get from most people is like, this is too complicated, I don't understand, I like the bar chart. So the fact that the visualizations actually make things a little more clear, but the default response is, I just like bar charts, I just like doing this. How do you overcome something like that where, it's not necessarily simple, it's just something you're more familiar with, and you don't want to invest the time in understanding it as a conventional visualization?
Well, look, if they're understanding it and getting the information they need, then it's not broken. I'm skeptical because when I see, we do this in the workshop, clustered or paired bar charts, where you see you're comparing A and B across lots of different things, and they're hard to read.
Right.
It's really hard to see where you're exceeding, where you're behind, etc. So we showed one example. We arm you with a whole bunch of other examples, and if you can come up with maybe it's not the connected dot plot, maybe it's the bar and bar, or maybe it's the bar with the reference line. But you come up with that clear win and say, hey, I'm going to ask you, where did we do best? Where did we do worst? Where did we do third best? Which one is really far ahead? Which one's far behind? And you show them that win, they go, okay, maybe we'll consider this. But that said, if they're getting the information they need, maybe they're freaks, maybe they're savants and they can actually parse these clustered bar charts, then maybe it's not something that needs repairing. But I suspect it is. Jeff, anything you want to add?
I would just add that change doesn't come overnight in those cases for me. I have a very technical audience at my companies, and I also have control of the technology, so I'm lucky in that respect that I can make whatever I want, force them to use it, but you don't want to do that, right? You want your user, it's got to be the user is the one using the data, so I can build this great visualization. If they don't understand it and they don't look at it, it's not serving its purpose, so what's the end goal there, right? So I find education and slow progression in those things, maybe not all at once, but introducing things here and there. Bullet graph is a great example. I love bullet graphs, but I find performance bands are really hard for people to get. They get the target and they get the bar, the line, that's easy. They get that part, but these performance bands that color the back of it, what does that mean? Why is it 80%? Why is it 90? And so we just get rid of them. And we have a bar with a target line, and everybody understands them. And now we use them on 6 or 7 dashboards in my company. And 5 years ago, we didn't have any. So that was sort of a natural progression. People get used to seeing them, and then the next time you have that come up, you can toss it in there.
By the way, you'll get a very sympathetic, we're still fighting this stuff. We're like, why do you have these scorecards with red, yellow, and green? And we try to show them better ways to do it. And that was the inspiration for living in the real world. I said, all right, if they insist on red, yellow, and green, let's at least give them something that isn't nauseating and that people with color vision deficiency can read. Other questions?
So is it necessarily a bad dashboard if you have to train the end users how to use it?
No, that's a really good question.
It is a great question. One of the things I like to tell my students is if you're sitting in a meeting and they're looking at your viz or your dashboard and they're asking you questions on how to read it, what does this mean, what does that mean, that you probably didn't do a great job in getting them to understand it. So the sweet spot is getting them to ask questions about the data. When you show them something and they have an aha moment, then they say, what about Texas, or what about Ohio, or what about my category, or can you show me this state, or can we do that? And that really gets the engagement. And I think to get from point A to point B, sometimes it takes some education on how to read it, which is a good annotation layer. Maybe when you first introduce the viz, maybe you have a big annotation layer at the top, which is how to read this chart, right? And you walk through with a sample and you sort of have have a help menu and you answer questions. After people are used to it, you can get rid of that, right? Use that real estate on your chart. Maybe you can make it hidden. Maybe you can make it on hover or something like that. But absolutely, another good example, real world example for me is control charts. You know, that's something that's very, very specific. If you're not familiar with statistical process control, you're not going to be familiar with how to read that. I taught my VP of operations how to read it. She's taken 1 or 2 statistics classes, but she's not an analytics professional. She understands it now. She can look at it every time she sees it. She knows what it means, and she learned that. So it's you can get past those.
The Andy needed training in how to understand the churn chart. You know, I had to do a little explanation of here's what's happening. Some people got it immediately because they're used to looking at that chart. Others aren't. Sometimes it's going to require a little bit of explanation. Look, my reaction to seeing Stephen Few's bullet chart the first time, it's just, here's how I'm doing, here's my goal, and hey, I exceeded my goal. Here's how I did for the second division. Oh, I'm behind my goal. But and that's super easy, you know, takes 5-10 seconds to explain. The thing that's a little more complicated is will sometimes have bands to go, well, I didn't reach my goal, but I can see by a little colored band that I'm at least past 80% of my goal, and that type of thing. So that usually requires a little bit of explanation. We have an interloper here.
Wow. Okay.
I think Jeff agrees with me. It's really rare that I'll put the performance bands in, that they usually end up occluding rather than elucidating the chart. Other questions? Everyone's just politely staying here, hoping
Talk a little bit about
to carry something really heavy back with them.
how the audience for dashboards is moving more mobile.
Oh yeah. Well, the two things I'm seeing. One is more of an expectation, and Andy has a great slide deck about it, of the information being the information you need where and when you need it. And that means it's got to appear on here, it's got to appear on a tablet. So a lot of work involved with that. And also the expectation of, that looks interesting. I need to know a little bit more, and being able to point and click something, so interactivity. So ubiquity and interactivity and mobile devices for sure.
Maybe share examples of client resistance and how you had to overcome it when sharing or creating new dashboards?
Want to start?
Want me to go
Repeat
first?
the question.
Client resistance and how we won them over. Either flowers and candy work really well.
Bourbon.
So that's a great question. A lot of different scenarios for that. In my company, I don't have that dilemma. So they come to me and ask me, hey, how should we do this, and usually take that advice. But when I do consulting gigs like that, I'll get that a lot. You get somebody who just absolutely wants a pie chart, or something, and slice it to death on the biz. That's really a hard thing to get from point A to point B. It's that progression of my first line of defense. If the VP of all things circular says, give me my pie chart, then the next thing that I will do is add in there maybe a little bar chart right next to it, so that they have their pie chart, but I have a bar chart right next to it that they can actually use and make a good comparison. And then over time, maybe they'll say, oh, well, I don't need the pie chart anymore, until they get used to reading it. So I will go with redundancy is a good one. I'll double encode something where I'll put extra things in the visualization. Then it kind of just depends on what else it is. Like we have an example where there was donuts in the book, and I kept the donuts, but I put them in a line and put bars above them. So the donuts, there's an example of real world. Somebody, just wanted to use donuts on their dashboard, and we give an example where, okay, you can have your donuts, but let's put a bar chart.
He's putting
right above
broccoli in the dough and then making the donut.
There you go. So that would be my start, and hopefully over time I'd wean them off of the dough.
Look, I'm failing as many times as I'm succeeding, and I'm able to go, yes, but I wrote a book. Listen to me. And it's you've got to go with what they want. And the whole catalyst for the book was initially this wonderful client who they were it was taking them weeks and weeks to do this big report in Excel that they would copy and paste into PowerPoint, and they said, we'd like to automate this. I said, can we do this faster? And they wanted to make something that looked just like, it was a whole bunch of scorecards using traffic light colors. And I said, well, as long as we're doing this, there's a much better way to show this information. And they loved it. And they said, we would love to do it, but we can't convince our client to do it. So we gave them better traffic light colors, and they know that they have something better. And so eventually when this evil VP who says, no, we want, is replaced or leaves the company, they have the better way of showing it. Don't give up the fight. You're not going to win initially. There's maybe small victories, or a toggle. Have a little thing that says bar pie. So they can see it as a pie chart, and then they can see it as a bar chart, and maybe they'll say, oh, the bar chart's actually a little bit better.
So let me just add one more thing. Is we didn't all just get together, in a data visualization room and round up and say, okay, we're voting on pie charts. Let's all hate pie charts, right? So this comes from empirical evidence of things, that we are not, and it has nothing to do with the chart, by the way. It has to do with the pre-attentive attributes, and we're not as good at judging angles or arcs or so on. And there's empirical research about this going back into the 1980s. What you can do is use that and say, okay, here's your sliced pie chart, here's a bar chart ranked, and I'm going to start asking you some questions. And my questions are going to be really fast. What's the top 5? What's the bottom 5? What's the second from the bottom? What's the third from the top? And I'm going to rapid fire these questions at you, and then I'm going to ask you to answer them like right there on the spot. And you can't do it with a pie chart. You're just not going to be able to do it, where this bar chart you will. So that would be another technique, is to just try to show what information you can get from a good visualization. I'm picking on pies here, but versus a bad visualization, and you can make that comparison. And I think that would help, sort of get your audience on board.
By the way, senior VPs love being shown up like that, so give it a try, and then when you're ready to, when you need a recommendation, I'll be happy to give you one. All right, shall we have the drawing of the book?
Yep.
Does anyone have a quarter? Anyone have a quarter?
Can we get it back?
It's just a quarter.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right, anyone that would like a copy of the book, please stand up. Okay, I need you to make a decision. If you think it's going to be heads, raise your right hand. If you think it's going to be tails, raise your left hand. Heads is right, tails is left. It is tails. Sit down if you chose heads. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, next round. All right. Right hand if you think it's heads, left if you think it's tails. Okay? It is heads. Wait, do we just have one? We have 2 people?
3.
3. Okay, 3.
No, 2.
2? Wait. Okay. This wasn't that hard. No. Okay, you chose heads. Anyone else choose heads? You did. Stand up. Okay, we got it between the 2 of you. Okay, I need one of you to choose heads, one to choose tails. Heads, tails. Here we go. It is heads. Here you go.
Great way to do that. That was perfect.
Would have put me back and, oh, man, keep me honest here.
Whose quarter was it?
There we go. Thank you very much.
That's a great way to do that.
I'm going
to steal from that.
I got it from Andy. But usually, man, everyone just said, hey, I'm on a roll. It was tails, I'm going to stay with tails. The hot hand wins.
All right, big round of applause for Steve. Special appearance by Jeff Shaffer.
Yeah, man. And if you have the time and the money, we are giving a full-day workshop on the book tomorrow.
Here in the building?
In this very building, in that very room, 120. If that interests you, let me know. I'll let you know what the link is. Randy, thank you so much
All
for
right,
having us.
thank you. These guys are going to be around if you have any more questions. Like I said, the next event is already up on Meetup for November, November 9th, when Alberto Cairo is coming to town. So sign up there so you can come. It's going to be a huge event. Thanks for coming out. Grab some food and a drink. There's still more over here. And I appreciate you all coming out. Thank you very much.